है, मेरा एन है।
अच्छा
अच्छा
Press the power button. No, dude. Now.
ये
That
पानी
is
इधर
so
रखो।
simple.
उधर रखो जी पानी।
Even a toddler can do that. But
Where is my phone, Ruben? मेरा फोन किधर है? फेंक देता है, इन्हें लेता फेंक देता है। पानी को लेता ना। आओ ना, सजाओ।
yes, because. Ruben, why internet is not coming? I don't know the credentials. I need Papa. But Papa is going up.
All good things must come to an end. And after 13 years of serving, speed, and not upgrading will leave your computer highly vulnerable to malicious attacks.
Okay.
You drink and after that you go play. You also please go on the beach.
I want to see. Oh, my God. See. King. Oh, come on.
वो पिज्जा को हटा दो वहाँ से। पूरी तरह से। रुबेन खाते पिज्जा? नहीं खाते थी वो मछली तरफ के वहाँ कचरा कहाँ रखते हैं?
Photo?
रुबेन,
Photo?
वो पिज्जा खाते हैं?
Yes.
खा जाओ। आप जी? हाँ?
You want to eat pizza? यहाँ ना को लाओ, वहीं रखो।
Pizza.
पिज्जा खाओ।
मैं दोनों को तेरा ला के देना, खाओ बोल के बैठ के। First go and eat, then you play whatever you want to.
Oh, come on. It's Nano.
Nano.
Yes, yes.
लेडीज ने टोटल पड़ा इधर कहाँ है?
वो आपकी जरा क्रीम देना जो बहुत
Let me accept it.
वो जी कि नहीं?
वो पिंक कलर की।
लिंक तो
हाँ, मैं बहुत खुदारा कर
is the internet so slow?
यहाँ का स्लो होगा तो
Only one dot? That can't be.
ये ना बहुत स्लो है तो इंटरनेट
Oh. Hey!
क्यों मारे? हाथ नहीं उठाना बोले ना?
But he was messing up with my computer.
मारा खाते सीधा बैठो। और आप क्यों उनको सता रहे? आप नहीं उठाना?
पाँव पे मारो दोनों को हम इधर उधर मत मारो
ट्रेन की है ना जाने। हाँ? You don't want this tab and take it and go.
Italy hates this internet connection.
नहीं खा रहा कोई नहीं लेते जाओ खाने वहाँ पे खा लो
and keep everything in sync. And the power of Windows 8.1 makes multitasking a breeze. So, say goodbye to an old friend, but say hello to a new one. Upgrade to Windows 8.1 today.
It really was a plan.
Than that, but I think it's important to note what kind of device I'm running this OS on, because really the device you run Windows 8.1 on is fundamental to whether or not it's good. So no, I'm not running this OS on my desktop computer, that one is running Windows 7. I'm running Windows 8.1 on Microsoft's own offering, the Surface Pro 3. So unlike say desktop computers, the Surface Pro 3 feels like it's built entirely around Windows 8.1. You can use it as a tablet and a computer, not just as a computer, which Windows 8.1 was going for, as a convenient shortcut to the start screen with the Windows button on the side, which, when you think about it, actually makes the start screen function as a home screen in iOS, and it has a touch screen, allowing the device to take advantage of the touch-oriented gestures in Windows 8.1, plus pen support, which desktop computers just don't even support, at least for the most part. But believe it or not, the device still functions like a Windows laptop that can run x86 programs. And that's what I love about this device, is that it's literally a tablet and a laptop, and I'm pretty sure this is what Windows 8.1 was going for. But it was also going for the previously mentioned gestures, and when I say gestures, I mean a lot of gestures, and the Surface Pro 3 takes advantage of pretty much every single one that Windows 8.1 is built in with, and it honestly puts the keyboard and mouse alternatives to shame. It's seriously embarrassing when you start taking a look at it. When you're opening the charms bar with your finger, you truly feel like you're pulling the charms bar out, rather than with a keyboard and mouse where you're moving your cursor all the way to the corner and moving it back down to open it. That keyboard and mouse just doesn't feel as natural as using it with a finger. Same with the lock screen. Swiping up on the lock screen feels a lot more natural than clicking and dragging up with the mouse. It seriously just doesn't feel right. This concept of touch feeling much more natural than a keyboard and mouse applies to pretty much every single system animation, including closing apps, multitasking, snapping apps, customizing the home screen with pinch gestures, and even something as simple as scrolling through the home screen using your finger feels much better than scrolling with your scroll wheel or pulling on the scroll bar. Once you start using Windows 8.1 and take advantage of the gestures with the right kind of device, it's really hard to go back. I still do appreciate the option to use the gestures with a keyboard and mouse. I just don't think it should be the only way to use them. Aside from gestures though, the UI for 8.1 looks a lot more touch oriented in general, and it's especially apparent when looking at the sizes of the live tiles. Makes a whole lot of sense from a tablet user's perspective. Tablet, it'd be really hard to use that device because tapping on everything would be a lot harder due to the icons being much smaller and close together. So naturally we need bigger icon sizes in 8.1 to tap on everything properly, at least if you're using a touchscreen device. Same idea goes for full screen apps. Using them makes sense on a tablet, but on desktop computers it just doesn't make too much sense. I just can't see in many cases where it's too useful. So that's a brief overview of why the Surface Pro 3 is a critical part to my Windows 8.1 experience, but some may be asking why I just don't. Okay, so this is the start screen, and first there needs to be some shortcuts left, and why there's just a lot going. Okay, so on tablet mode, use the screen apps anymore if there's a tap away from it. Some shortcuts. Some may be asking why I just don't upgrade to Windows 10, which has a tablet mode built into it, and well, there are multiple reasons. So, turning on tablet mode in Windows 10, this looks hideous. Okay, so this is the start screen, and first impressions aren't too great. There's just a lot going on here. Like, why are there so many buttons and shortcuts on the sidebar to the left, and why is the taskbar permanently on the bottom of the screen? I understand there needs to be some shortcuts for ease of use, but like, does a shortcut to settings always need to be on the sidebar when I can just pin it to the start screen? Also, the taskbar being permanently on the start screen and on other apps really just takes away from the benefits of full screen apps, because really they aren't full screen apps anymore if there's a taskbar locked onto the bottom of the screen. It's literally the same as maximizing a window in Windows 7. Okay, but aside from looks, how's the functionality? Well, not too great. Many of the gestures in Windows 10 have been modified, but they just don't feel as intuitive as they were in Windows 8.1. For example, instead of sliding your finger to the all apps list in Windows 8.1, Windows 10 decided to go for hamburger menus on the top left. Yeah, flattery. I don't really like this. It kind of makes this feel like a tappy, pushy, clunky UI that just doesn't feel that natural. There's also multitasking. When I slide my finger from the left to multitask, I'm expecting an animation from the left to occur, but instead for some reason sliding my finger from the left zooms everything out. In 8.1 this gesture had an app come out from the left of the screen. You're actually holding something. There's a relationship between your finger and the device. You're controlling the gesture. In Windows 10 it just doesn't feel like my finger and the device are really working together. It's more of a command rather than a gesture I can control. And this applies to a bunch of other animations in tablet mode as well, not just this one. I might be nitpicking, but for me, a lot of the gestures just doesn't feel as natural as it was in Windows 8.1. In fact, many of the gestures in this new tablet mode have been completely removed. You can't swipe to other menus, you can't pinch out the zoom, you can't do anything. Seriously, what advantages does this new tablet mode have? I can't think of a single good reason why I'd prefer this over this. Also, this is a small one, but the only customization you have over the tablet mode in Windows 10 is the background and the accent color. That's it. Seriously, that's all you have, the background and the accent color. In 8.1 you could pick a different background for the start screen separate from the desktop wallpaper, and some had many cool effects when you scroll, and the overall UI was much more colorful and vibrant. In general, tablet mode is just very plain, boring, and simple in Windows 10. It doesn't even have somewhat unique animations when you're opening apps, it's just a fade animation. In Windows 8.1, when opening apps, animations were more active and everything was like flipping around, it felt so alive. In Windows 10, not so much. Since Windows 10's release, the tablet UI has gone through like only one change since its introduction, so this really proves the point that Microsoft just doesn't seem all too interested in improving tablet mode in the near future, and I wouldn't be surprised if they removed it either. So yeah, Windows 8.1 is virtually better in every regard when it comes to its tablet UI, and I just don't see any reason why I need to transition to Windows 10 when its tablet mode is just a downgrade overall. Aside from tablet mode though, the combination of touch and desktop in one OS is, in my opinion, handled much better in Windows 8.1. Why? Well, let's look at it this way. Let's say I want to use Windows 8.1 purely as a desktop machine. What I do is I launch the desktop app from the start screen, and this entire UI will open applications specifically for the desktop, such as the control panel, the Win32 calculator, the desktop version of Internet Explorer. But let's say I want to use Windows 8.1 purely as a tablet instead. Well, now I can take off the type cover on my Surface Pro, and now I can go to the start screen, and here I can use apps that are specifically designed for touch. So for example, I'll be more encouraged to use the Windows Settings app rather than the control panel, or the app version of the calculator rather than the Win32 calculator, or the mobile version of Internet Explorer rather than the desktop version, and so on. Both UIs are much more separated in Windows 8.1, which I actually found as an advantage because it just doesn't disrupt one UI from another. Plus, you're still able to use the touchscreen and the desktop UI if you want to. Contrastingly, Windows 10 tries to combine both the touch and desktop UI instead of separating them. And it's mostly hit or miss. When it works, it really works. When it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. So yeah, for me, I just like the separation concept in Windows 8.1 much better than the combining concept in Windows 10. Of course, there's also the usual Windows 10 quirks like the lack of theming, terrible quality feature updates, less stable and smooth than its predecessors, and all of that. And just as a final point to both touch and desktop users, Windows 8.1 had a plethora of other really useful features, such as the redesigned Task Manager, Fast Boot, built-in Windows Defender, Microsoft account integration for those who liked it, the lock screen, which in my case I actually found as a benefit, and the Windows Store. Yeah, I actually use the Windows Store, I know I'm weird. So despite the failure that Windows 8 was, we should all appreciate the effort Microsoft made and their approach. And if you're that right type of user, Windows 8 may have served you really well. And seeing as I was that right type of user, Windows 8.1 served and will keep serving me really well. Today we'll be reacting to why I still use Windows 7 in 2020. As you all know, I uploaded this video almost 2 years ago and I wanted to visit it to see if my opinion is what I still stand by. Has Windows 10 changed over time compared to what it was in this video? Has Windows 11 changed my opinion and all that stuff? So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's go ahead and full screen the video. Let's get started. Why are you why do you still run Windows 7? Also, is that Windows 7? I admire your bravery. And his main OS is Windows 7. What is Windows 7? Windows 7. Okay, back when I made this video, before I made this video, I had a couple of other videos. A lot of people noticed that I was using Windows 7 on my main machine. I was getting a ton of, especially when my channel was growing a lot, I was getting a ton of comments asking me why I still use Windows 7. It's out of support. What are you doing? So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna jumble that up in the beginning of the video. It was pretty funny. There was actually a lot more comments than what I showed in this video. This was just a little bit. This operating system is really old. So old, in fact, that support ended for it almost 9 months ago. And I'm pretty sure there are some younger viewers out there that are actually younger than Windows 7 itself. It's still pretty funny. But me, on the other hand, I actually still use it. That's kind of weird. Why haven't I moved on to a more modern operating system? Well, let's talk about my possible alternatives. First up, Windows 8.1. Now, I actually use Windows 8.1 on my Surface Pro 3, and I think it runs exceptionally well on a device like this. It has a touch screen, and I can fold it into a tablet, and I think this is one of the best operating systems you could put on a device like this. I still do stand by this opinion. Maybe we'll cover this when I, at some point, react to why I still use Windows 8.1 in 2020, but in summary, I still think Windows 8.1 is even one of the best operating systems for a tablet. Even better than Windows 11 in my opinion. However, I'm talking about my desktop computer with a keyboard and mouse without a touchscreen monitor. And for a device like that, yeah, Windows 8.1 just doesn't make sense at all. First up, I'm just dishing out money for 3 more years of support, so after 3 years, I'm gonna have to go through this whole process all over again. Secondly, the start screen is just bad on a desktop computer. Elements are so big in the start menu that it's just not an intuitive experience for keyboard and mouse users. And I could do some readjusting to Windows 8.1 to actually make it work well, but it just takes away from the cleanliness of the operating system. Okay, I remember this part. I don't know why taking away the cleanliness of the start menu program. It's kind of annoying that Microsoft didn't like it and stuff to just solve that. I don't think it, like, if you installed like classic shell or start as back or anything, I don't think it like takes away the cleanliness of the operating system. I even put in black text, not really. I like second guessed myself. I really did over exaggerate that part, just installing a single program. And because it's so underused, when programs stop supporting Windows 7, it's probably going to stop running on Windows 8.1 as well. And yeah, we're seeing the effects of this happening right now. For me personally, I use a program called Dolphin Late Wii and GameCube games, and recently I read an article that was talking about them ending support for Windows 7, but they also mentioned that they were ending support for Windows 8, even though Windows 8 support hasn't even ended yet. So we're definitely seeing the effects of this happen right now, and so I'm pretty happy that I said this. I just don't want to spend money for 3 more years of support and less program compatibility in the future. And yeah, I do still stand by these points. I'm happy that I didn't upgrade to Windows 8.1. We're seeing most of the effects of this already happen. Windows 8.1 support is ending soon. There's already programs that are ending support for it early, even before its end of support. So I do still think Windows 8.1 was not a good option for me at that time. I'll talk more about Windows 10, but what about macOS? Well, macOS basically needs entire new hardware to actually function properly, and if I didn't want to buy new hardware, I really don't want to go through the process of port and limited program compatibility, and also I just don't like the UI of macOS that much. Now Linux... Okay, I remember, I didn't get hate for this. I kind of just got some negative comments, people just getting like a little bit upset that I didn't really talk about Linux in depth. I did like put a comment like I think people are mad at me because of Linux, and I just gave a little small explanation that I think Linux is good for the right people. It just wasn't for me. Just a little funny thing to add there. Windows 10 is the only logical alternative. However, it just doesn't live up to the standards that Windows 7 had. Welcome to a segment I like to call trashing on Windows 10 because I'm a terrible person. Yeah, when I made this video, I kind of had a lot of biases. Nowadays,
कहाँ गए आप?
Toilet.
Why you are not answering?
I try and keep my biases out of the way unless we're making opinionated videos like this. But even for opinionated videos, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm gonna trash on Windows 10. Like, I don't do that anymore. But I did definitely have this aggressive tone toward Windows 10, and my biases really got in the way. So I'm kind of glad that I changed over time and not really using this tone. But we're reacting to it, so let's see what I have to say from 2 years ago. First up, lowering ads. Oh, you install a free Crush Soda Saga. And while you're there, check out our other great third-party apps. For an operating system that markets itself with the phrase "get things done" and that it helps you focus, I find this really obnoxious that there's storage being filled up with really unnecessary ads and bloatware. And every time I uninstall these apps, I feel like they reinstall themselves again every single time. I think people misunderstood me when I was saying they reinstall themselves every single time. Every new feature update that Windows 10 came out with, I did experiences bloatware would
Why can't you improve?
just reinstall itself. With that being said, I don't other platforms, so I don't think it's that big of a deal anymore. Windows 10 also has a very bland UI with very flat and inanimate elements. Windows 7 has the advantage of Windows Aero, and Windows 8.1 does have a similar UI, but it's much more colorful and alive, especially considering live tiles are flipping all the time and not like every 2 minutes on Windows 10. A lot of this could be fixed, by the way, if it wasn't for Windows 10 breaking themes all the time. Yeah, and I still do stand by this opinion. I do think Windows 10 has a pretty underwhelming UI for a modern version of Windows. It's inanimate, it's bland, and just it's a personal preference. I just don't like it. In regard to the themes though, I used to use Windows 10 a lot for themes, like a lot, mostly because of the bland UI for me. But every single time I updated to a new version of Windows 10, themes would completely break. Things would become unresponsive, the whole entire operating system would freeze. It was a gigantic mess. It was horrific. Nowadays though, Windows 10 doesn't really have this issue because it's in its extended support phase, so you're not really seeing any new UI changes or big feature updates. I mean, they call them, Microsoft still calls them feature updates, but they're not really feature updates. Here's it's a big one. Terrible quality feature update. I feel like every single time a feature update was released, something, we were just talking about this, has to break. Whether it's a program refusing to run properly, to the entire operating system just being a garbled mess. This was one of the biggest reasons why I actually downgraded to Windows 7 back when I used Windows 10 from 2015 to 2017. However, on top, there's nothing really to say there. But there was other issues. A lot of people suffered with other issues. I remember there was some news about how some people updated to a new version of Windows 10 and some people's files would be randomly deleted. So it wasn't just me. There was a lot of people experiencing problems with feature updates. On top of that, there's also many inconsistencies and duplicate programs, which is one of the most controversial things about Windows 10. And you know what? I'll keep this short. Different right-click menus, different setting control menus, different paint programs, and the list goes on. There's so many duplicate programs and inconsistencies in Windows 10 that it just boggles my mind that they didn't fix this yet. I just noticed that this chapter is called Windows 10 is bad. Again, with the aggressive tone I had. Alright, so let's address this point here. This hasn't changed in the past 2 years. Windows 10 is still like the same level of inconsistency I'm seeing, and it's still the same. I still do think that this is a big deal, don't get me wrong, but you can simply disable most of these programs. Like Internet Explorer you can disable, you can uninstall Groove Music, or you can disable Windows Media Player, you can uninstall Paint 3D if you want to. Like there's some flexibility here. Again, I do still think this is a pretty bad thing for Windows 10. It's a lot better in Windows 11. I'll definitely say that Windows 11 definitely handles this issue a lot better. It's still not perfect. Because of my tone, I wasn't really talking about like you could just simply uninstall them and stuff. There's also the in-your-face aspect of Windows 10, including it begging you to upgrade to the latest version, sometimes without the user's consent. Oh my god, I remember this. I remember when there was this thing called Windows 10 Update Assistant or Upgrade Assistant or something. It would just would just install an update for you without asking. It would just install the update, you would restart your computer, and you're suddenly on a different version of Windows, on top of the feature updates breaking things, on top of themes breaking for feature updates. This entire chemistry gave me the worst Windows 10 experience. And I don't know if I was unlucky or something, but it was horrific. And I kept trying to uninstall this app, this upgrade or update assistant, whatever it's called. It would randomly reinstall itself. It was the worst thing ever. I remember it even to this day. It was the most annoying thing ever. Nowadays they fixed this. It's not that big of a deal anymore. But back when I used Windows 10, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe this. And if you don't know what you're doing during setup or post installation, you'll sometimes be forced to use a Microsoft account no matter what. I'm pretty sure in an update last year, they actually removed the ability to create an offline account during setup, and that really annoyed me. And okay, well, this isn't even the right menus, but but yeah, this is still an issue. I still think this is pretty annoying. It's not an issue. Like, Microsoft is doing this obviously on purpose. And the newer update of Windows 11, maybe 22H2, I think they're doing this in 22H2. Even for professional versions of Windows, they're gonna remove the offline account option. So they're gonna make this even more annoying. Bunch of other users. There was a workaround to it, but it just boggles my mind that they're trying to force this into the user no matter what you do. And sometimes people don't want to use a Microsoft account, but Microsoft is shoving it in their throats no matter what. And there's also suggestions everywhere throughout the operating system whenever you're doing something, but I'm pretty sure there's a way to disable that via setting. Yeah, I don't even know why I said this. This is not what.
What you want?
Baby.
क्या प्रश्न सुन रही? What you want? Charger.
It's not working smoothly.
Over the charger?
It's like
How much?
36.
30.
36.
Huh?
36.
26.
Yeah.
26 is enough, no?
36.
Huh?
36.
Okay, enough. What are you got? Okay? Don't so down already. So down.
No, I don't like to sleep.
if you can turn it off, then why did you say it's bad? Windows 10 is also a lot less stable and smooth compared to its predecessors, especially if you're using older hardware and for those using a mechanical hard drive instead of an SSD. Which, yes, I use a hard drive because I need more storage. I feel like this also has something to do with feature updates being released twice a year with little I still do say that Windows 10 is pretty poorly optimized for a hard drive. Mechanical hard drive, and I still do SSD. A hard SSD, just like people are making the SSD. Updates are being released twice a year, the cycle happens all over again in the span of about 6 months. Windows 10 nowadays you don't really need to worry about this. With a combination of desktop and tablet UIs, there are times when some elements are just so big in Windows 10 that it just doesn't make sense for mouse and keyboard users, like the settings in the Settings app being big and spaced out, the calculator buttons being larger, File Explorer menu bars being bigger, and so on. Windows 8.1, in my opinion, I don't think Windows 10's approach to tablet and desktops, the mix of it, I don't think it was a good approach. But the examples I gave were pretty bad, like File Explorer, the calculator, like come on. And actually I would say the calculator is even better than before. does keyword most of this differently because it tries to separate desktop and touch. The touch is in the start screen with all your apps, and the desktop part is in the desktop app. So everything you'd want to do with the keyboard and mouse are found in the desktop app.
Still good
Windows
with that.
10 instead tries to combine all these elements into one, and it just doesn't work well.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. I hated the tower.
Oh, Nano, get the charger.
Like, I just didn't like it. Oh yeah, and Cortana is basically useless. Wow, that was kind of mean actually. You're funny. She's mostly useful in a mobile environment when I'm in a hurry and I need to do something quickly. And I feel like this is where virtual assistants thrive. But in this case, I'm sitting down and taking the time to finish my work, so she's kind of pointless to me. There are some useful features to Windows 10, like extra desktops, but the cons outweigh the pros for me. Windows 10 just feels incomplete and not yet matured, so I just don't feel like this is justifiable. Yeah, even now, I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking, like, if I was in Windows 7 or if I was in Windows 8.1 and Windows 10 was an option for me or Windows 11 was an option for me, I'm just thinking in the back of my head, like, why should I even upgrade in the first place? Let's put security on to go, like, start. There's an app store. And I'd have to deal with all of this for what? Security updates? Which brings me to why Windows 7 is just better. And I'll try to skim through this section a little bit quicker, but Windows 7 is just much more stable, quicker, and smoother, no matter which hardware you're on, whether it's newer or older, or if you're using an SSD or a hard drive. It's also less in your face all the time. It actually just lets you get things done without any disturbances, and you're not being begged to use a Microsoft account or update the operating system all the time. It's way more consistent than Windows 10, and it's much more reliable as well, meaning that nothing breaks after an update all the time. There's also no bloatware, like the preloaded programs are actually useful. Like seriously, Windows accessories are basically all I need preloaded. Why do I need Candy Crush Soda Saga preloaded with Windows 10? It also has hands down the best start menu of all time. Like, it's so simple and yet so useful at the same time. Yeah, I still do think Windows 7's start menu was the best. It's very close to Windows 11 though. I barely have to do any modifications to have a good user experience. And also, just as a side note and a bonus fact that Windows Aero Glass Transparency is like the best thing ever. It looks so good. The OS is also designed for keyboard and mouse users, so element sizes make sense and it's faster for me to do certain tasks. In my eyes, Windows 7 was basically the final version of Windows to add some actual useful features just like Vista and XP. And afterward, other just change major parts of the Windows formula for better or for worse. And this brings... Okay, so for the majority of that segment... I did agree with most of those points. I don't know if they warranted like security, like if it was worth like risking your security, but I think we're gonna talk about it soon, like why the security updates aren't a big deal for me. Brings us to the final point of this video, which everyone's been waiting for. Am I worried about my security? No. I made a Windows 7 survival guide video back when we could find my points. Web browsers are still up to date, antiviruses are still up to date, the majority of other programs are still up to date, and we have Brains. Windows Update is not only just one layer of security, but it's honestly the last layer of security because all the other factors I just mentioned basically supplement this lack of security updates, and they're the first layers that viruses go through before they get to Windows Update and Windows itself. And besides, this operating system was last updated in January of 2020. Unless we were in the early 2010s or the late 2000s, most vulnerabilities at this point have been found, and currently the chances of getting hacked, supported or unsupported, is slim. Now if I was using this operating system 5 years later, then yeah, this would be a big issue. If my programs are up to date, I'm okay with living without updates. The reason why people don't use XP and Vista anymore is not just because of security updates, but because programs are out of support, which is a much bigger security risk than Windows Update. I'm not encouraging that everyone just starts using out-of-date operating systems. This is just a personal preference, and I'm just not quite ready to make the transition to Windows 10 yet. So after watching the security aspect of this video, I'm kind of left in a gray area, because for me it's not as simple as saying I agree or I disagree. So let's first address this layers thing I was talking about. I'm aware that even if you have the most up-to-date web browsers, if you have the most up-to-date antivirus, if you have the most up-to-date programs, of course there is still a chance of being infected on Windows 7. It's not like these three factors alone will make you completely secure on Windows 7. I understand that completely. But the question is, how much higher of a risk is it living without Windows that you're gonna get infected with the virus? It's not as simple as saying that, because there's a bunch of different factors you need to consider here. How tech savvy are you? How careful are you online? What is your use case? Because there's so many different factors you need to consider here. And here's the thing, even if you're on more modern versions of Windows, like Windows 8.1, 10, and 11, all these supported versions of Windows, there's still a risk that you can get infected and you can get viruses and you can get malware and all this stuff. The question is, how much more risky is it living without Windows Update? How long are you gonna live without Windows Update? How many security updates are you actually missing out on? Because here's something that bothers me a little bit, is that once a version of Windows goes out of support, like Windows XP, Vista 7, and people start making videos and posts about it, which is fine. People can do that to raise awareness and stuff. But there's some people, not everyone, but there's some people who act like right after the date of end of support, it's the end of the world. Like you're gonna lose your bank account information, your files are gonna be deleted, your computer's gonna explode. Probably not that part, but at the same time, I also understand that people need to hear that urgency so they can take action seriously, and they don't like to start being super careless about it. So it's just a game of risk. How much risk did I want to take? And guys, I said this in the video already, maybe I wasn't serious enough, but please don't install unsupported operating systems just because Mr. Triggerzolt did. This is a personal thing. This is not a recommendation by any means whatsoever. If you want a recommendation from me, I would just say stay with Windows 10 or 11. Stay up to date, stay secure. Don't do this. So yeah, let's get back into the video. But what does the future entail for me? I've been keeping up to date on Windows 10 over the past year or two using Windows 7, and I have to say that Windows 10 is finally maturing properly. Things are starting to look like they're in the right place now, even if nothing is perfect. I've also started using a Microsoft account more and more on my phone and my Surface Pro 3 running Windows 8.1, so Windows 10 is starting to become a more appealing option to me. I might be upgrading to Windows 10 sooner or later, maybe in a month or two once the next version 2009, finally comes out. However, for the time being, I think I'll stick with Windows 7 and wait for a few more things to be ironed out. And that is exactly why I still use Windows 7 in 2020. So I still agree with this last point. Windows 10 has gone a lot better over the years. In fact, after reflecting on this video, I would even say that during this video's upload date, I would say that Windows 10 was already in a good spot. It's just that because of Windows 10 2017, 2018 PTSD that I just couldn't accept it. So rewatching the video after 2 years, I definitely think there were some points I agreed with in the video. There were definitely also some points I either disagreed with or thought were completely unnecessary for the sake of arguments. One thing I wish though was I wish I was a little bit more open-minded about Windows 10. I would feel like I was really biased against it. I mean, obviously one of the chapters is called Windows 10 is bad. I wish I was a little bit more fair to it. I wish I was a little bit more open-minded. I wish I wasn't as aggressive toward it, if that makes any sense. Almost 9 months ago, and I'm pretty sure there are some younger viewers out there that are actually younger than Windows 7 itself. But me on the other hand, I actually still use it. That's kind of weird. Why haven't I moved on to a more modern operating system? Well, let's talk about my possible alternatives. First up, Windows 8.1. Now, I actually use Windows 8.1 on my Surface Pro 3, and I think it runs exceptionally well on a device like this. It has a touch screen and I can fold it into a tablet, and I think this is one of the best operating systems you can put on a device like this. However, I'm talking about my desktop computer with a keyboard and mouse without a touchscreen monitor. And for a device like that, yeah, Windows 8.1 just doesn't make sense at all. First up, I'm just dishing out money for 3 more years of support, so after 3 years, I'm gonna have to go through this whole process all over again. Secondly, the start screen is just bad on a desktop computer. Elements are so big in the start menu that it's just not an intuitive experience for keyboard and mouse users. And I could do some readjusting to Windows 8.1 to actually make it work well, but it just takes away from the cleanliness of the operating system. And because it's so underused, when programs stop supporting Windows 7, it's probably going to stop running on Windows 8.1 as well. I just don't want to spend money for 3 more years of support and less program compatibility in the future. I'll talk more about Windows 10, but what about macOS? Well, macOS basically needs entire new hardware to actually function properly, and if I didn't want to buy new hardware, I really don't want to go through the process of Hackintoshing because of driver support and limited program compatibility, and also I just don't like the UI of macOS that much. Now Linux... Windows 10 is the only logical alternative, however, it just doesn't live up to the standards that Windows 7 had. Welcome to a segment I like to call Trashing on Windows 10 because I'm a terrible person. First up, bloatware and ads. Oh, you install a fresh new copy of Windows 10? Oh, well, go into the start menu to check out our free apps like Candy Crush Soda Saga. And while you're there, check out our other great third-party apps. For an operating system that markets itself with the phrase get things done and that it helps you focus, I find this really obnoxious that there's storage being filled up with really unnecessary ads and bloatware. And every time I uninstall these apps, I feel like they reinstall themselves again every single time. Windows 10 also has a very bland UI with very flat and inanimate elements. Windows 7 has the advantage of Windows Aero, and Windows 8.1 does have a similar UI, but it's much more colorful and alive, especially considering live tiles are flipping all the time and not like every 2 minutes on Windows 10. A lot of this could be fixed, by the way, if it wasn't for Windows 10 breaking themes all the time. And here's a big one. Terrible quality feature updates. I feel like every single time a feature update was released, something has to break, whether it's a program refusing to run properly, to the entire operating system just being a garbled mess. This was one of the biggest reasons why I actually downgraded to Windows 7 back when I used Windows 10 from 2015 to 2017. However, on top of that, there's also many inconsistencies and duplicate programs, which is one of the most controversial things about Windows 10. And you know what? I'll keep this short. Different right-click menus, different setting control menus, different paint programs, and the list goes on. There's so many duplicate programs and inconsistencies in Windows 10 that it just boggles my mind that they didn't fix this yet. There's also the in-your-face aspect of Windows 10, including it begging you to upgrade to the latest version, sometimes without the user's consent, and I've seen this happen a lot. And if you don't know what you're doing during setup or post-installation, you'll sometimes be forced to use a Microsoft account no matter what. I'm pretty sure in an update last year, they actually removed the ability to create an offline account during setup, and that really annoyed me and a bunch of other users. There was a workaround to it, but it just boggles my mind that they're trying to force this into the user no matter what you do, and sometimes people don't want to use a Microsoft account, but Microsoft is shoving it in their throats no matter what. And there's also suggestions everywhere throughout the operating system whenever you're doing something, but I'm pretty sure there's a way to disable that via settings. Windows 10 is also a lot less stable and smooth compared to its predecessors, especially if you're using older hardware and for those using a mechanical hard drive instead of an SSD, which yes, I use a hard drive because I need more storage. I feel like this also has something to do with feature updates being released twice a year with little optimization from both Microsoft's side, as I've stated before, and the program developer's side because they now need to update their programs for newer versions of Windows 10 depending on how the update affects their programs. However, because the updates are being released twice a year, the cycle happens all over again in the span of about 6 months. With a combination of desktop and tablet UIs are just so big in Windows 10 that it just doesn't make sense for mouse and keyboard users, like the settings in the Settings app being big and spaced out, the calculator buttons being larger, File Explorer menu bars being bigger, and so on. Windows 8.1 does keyword most